Great morning, world. Great morning, friends. We're just getting ourselves live here. Okay, cool. We're live on a bunch of platforms right now. So, great morning, world. Great morning, humans. This is your boy, Dr. JC Doornick, aka the Dragon. And as you can see, we're coming with the microphone setup today. We're in the podcast studio and we're recording this episode today once we get started, as a soon to be launched episode on the Make Sense with Dr. JC podcast. So I see some people filing in and I just want to say welcome and great morning to you. This is going to be a fun episode. And we're streaming right now, you know, just for those that are joining us on YouTube or Facebook, Substack as well. I'm looking at a couple of different screens here. Great morning, Lori. Good to see you. Just recognize that there's this capability now. I mean, I'm kind of putting myself on the line here because I'm going to record a podcast episode, which I can edit. But there's a whole bunch of different platforms that we can stream on. So I want to give a shout out to all of my friends at Substack, which is a writing platform, which I just thoroughly enjoy. Great morning to you and everybody on Facebook and YouTube and things like that. We come live every Monday. And I say we, I think I just referred to myself as we. But we come live every Monday, call it Make Sense Mondays. And very often I use Mondays just because it's the first day of the week and it's a great time to just spend together and place your conditioned programmed response that was going to load up like a computer boots up in the morning and put it on pause just long enough where you can entertain and permit yourself to grab onto a fresh new perspective. And that for me lends support to the idea of if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And becoming the dominant force and shot caller of your day requires that you control the way you look at things, because isn't that one of the biggest challenges that we have? So I'm going to be actually reading a episode that is also going to show up in a Substack that's going to come out, and just really, really excited. This one's called The Alchemy of Forgiveness. And there's so many, like I said before, there's so many different platforms and mediums right now. And I just think that it's a great idea. I very often am talking to people on the Substack platform about ideas about how to grow your following, but more importantly, provide people with value. I mean, that's what people are looking for. People are looking for value right now. So one of the things that I think is a great idea is to record an audio, maybe even a video that can accompany your Substack or your blog, because everybody's different. I have all the intentions of reading somebody's blog, but it's just long. I like the idea of listening to it on a podcast while I'm driving or something like that. So anyway, a lot of people ask me some questions about why my account is growing, and I think it has a lot to do with interacting with people, making more deposits than withdrawals. That's a big one in life, isn't it? And also just creating value. I don't think any of you guys are looking for invaluable things today. Did anybody wake up today saying, I want to decrease my value? No, I don't think so. So I want to welcome everybody, and I consider you all friends. Some of you that I have not met yet, but today, what I want to do is I want to share a piece, and I call it a piece because it's going to end up as a Substack, as a blog. But I want to share a piece that I'm going to be posting in my Make Sense Substack. And like I said, it's called The Alchemy of Forgiveness. And the subtitle of it is going to read, This Time It's All About You. That's an interesting paradox right there. And by the way, because we're live, I can interact with people. So Abadali says, agreed. Creating the value is the king. You got that right. So my subtitle that reads, This Time It's All About You. Isn't that an interesting paradox where we're kind of raised to think that we're not supposed to say that, right? That would be considered selfish. But human beings are really wired to be value seeking missiles. I mean, nobody thinks, says, or does anything that doesn't have value for yourself. So I think one of the big steps today, and this might be a power move for you today, is to be okay with receiving, not feeling like you have to give, 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 give. Because remember something, the moment that you receive, you're giving somebody else the beautiful luxury of giving. So I want everybody to recognize that when it comes to forgiveness, we call it the alchemy of forgiveness, a big shift today, this is some good shift, is going to be making it about you. And you'll see what I mean by that. So this was organized actually and generated from a mastermind topic that I recently did actually yesterday. I do these once a month. And I did that for, I guess we can call it our plant medicine integration group. This is a world that the dragon enjoys and lives in. And I co-host a mastermind once a month. And I was talking about this topic of forgiveness. So I've re-engineered it, for you guys, and I hope that you really enjoy it. And by the way, as I'm going through this, because I'm in my podcast studio, because I'm recording this in high quality audio for my podcast, just remember if you're somebody that wants to do something like that, what's cool about it is that you can edit it and shorten it for the podcast episode, but at the same time, simultaneously interact and do some live stuff, once again, increasing the value of a dolly, right? Welcome, Tia, as well. What I love about social media is it gives us the opportunity to speak to people all over the world. When I look at my Substack is growing very fast right now, and it's just international. Very cool. So when I thought about this topic, I thought I would make it. I thought actually it would make for a great short form podcast. So we haven't started the podcast yet, really. But sometimes it's nice to have a short form podcast episode, that will accompany the Substack, like I said. So as we approach this sensitive subject, and it's a very sensitive subject, forgiveness, I want you to know that I really don't in any way, shape, or form know what it's like to walk in your shoes, nor do you know what it's like to walk in mine. And it's funny how people make assumptions that they do because they tell people what to do. But I don't know what it's like to walk in your shoes. And I also don't know what your pain and your circumstances are. So when I talk about a topic, I'm in no way, shape, or form encouraging people to forgive or take action and things like that. That's up to you. Oh, look at that. We have Celia from New Zealand. You made it. My new friend from Substack in New Zealand. So I just want everybody to know that my focus is about providing some good shift. And that means just pointing out some things that will allow you to start asking the question when you make a statement that has an exclamation point on it. Maybe make a statement and ask a question, what else might be true? So my focus and intention with the Make Sense, brand is to just help people capture things from a different perspective, right? So I don't know you and I don't know your pain, nor can I ever know, even if you explained it to me. So this process of forgiveness is a unique and individualized situation that will carry an acquired taste and reality for many of you. So what I do know for sure is this, and I'll say this with certainty. Your life experience and everything, I mean, we're all kind of the same, we're all interconnected, can become extraordinary. This is what I know for sure, because as a coach, I've been coaching for 20 years in health transformation and just watched miraculous things. So I know what's possible. I don't know if anybody will do anything about it, but I know that your life experience can become extraordinary the moment that you decide to stop carrying the weight on your shoulders of somebody else's stuff, right? And we'll go over some analogies. And it's going to happen the moment that you change the way you look at forgiveness. So what we're going to do today is entertain the idea of capturing a different perspective. You don't have to accept it, but we're going to look at something like forgiveness from a different vantage point, and you'll decide if you like it or not, and if it's useful or not. That's kind of my little disclaimer. And in full transparency, though, and this is important to understand, I don't think that there's a finish line for something like forgiveness. I've come to terms that I'm going to be working to release, my demons and release myself from its strong grasp and burden for the rest of my life. However, and this is might be your power move today, it's actually in my decision and the intention behind the decision to work on it and get rid of it that I found my freedom. It's just the idea that I'm working on it that has provided me from freedom, because in that idea and that decision, I start moving in a different direction. Make sense? So here we go. Chances are, if you're here and you're human, you might be holding on to something heavy. Now, if you don't think you're holding on to something heavy, you might just have become a fifth degree black belt at pretending that you don't. But it could be a wound, it could be a betrayal, a disappointment. Perhaps somebody hurt you knowingly or unknowingly. And there's an interesting part of this discussion. Or maybe you hurt somebody, right? Maybe the hardest part is that you hurt yourself. So that might be a distinction that you're coming. But now you're left with this question: how do I let it go? Should I let it go? Am I supposed to let it go? Is it beneficial to let it go? Or should I stand my ground? Right? So this is this threshold. And the reason why I found it interesting to speak about this in the plant medicine world is when people go experience a ceremony, which could be interpreted as you reading a book, hearing a podcast, or listening to this conversation, or having some sort of a new insight or breakthrough. When you come back to your baseline reality, or whatever you call that, in your cell phone, right? You have to go through what's called the integration process. And that's a big term in the plant medicine world, is how do I take these new distinctions and lessons and integrate them in my life? So there's a threshold when something has happened to you, right? And you're holding on to it, but you understand, how do I let this go? That's the integration process. And unfortunately, most people stay in that process. A lot of people are looking to get from point A to point B, or get into town from their house in a rocking chair right now, in an oscillating pattern. So integration is not just for those that are on a spiritual path as well. So this doesn't have to be like some sort of a kumbaya hooey moment. This relates to everybody. It's for anyone who's ever had their heart cracked open by life. And if you've never had your heart cracked open by life, I mean, I would assume that you're 6 feet underground and you're not watching this. So it's the process of sitting with what happened rather than avoiding it. Sitting with what happened, absorbing the impact of it, and slowly transforming the pain into wisdom. I love the analogy of looking at a wave that's coming and it's building up and it comes to its peak. And we watch it go by, crash, and then dissipate up on the shore. So I love this idea of looking at things like pain and suffering and forgiveness and recognizing that there is a beginning, peak, and fruition, right? So we're going to talk about the space between what broke and what's next, because that's where the win is. As Viktor Frankl from A Man's Search for Meaning says, that the game is won in between the stimulus, the thing that happened, and our response. And this is what we talk about in the Make Sense Academy, and that's our private academy. And I see some folks from that here. So here's the truth. It's funny to say, here's the truth. Here's my truth. You can't fully integrate from an experience without forgiveness. Forgiveness is a tool, a bridge perhaps, that permits for integration, meaning letting things go. Right? We can't just let go without practicing forgiveness. And let that sit with you. Just ask yourself, can I let go of something that happened without practicing forgiveness? And forgiveness, well, that's what's going to set us free. Okay. So what's interesting about forgiveness is that when we're feeling the burden of something that happened to us, we don't typically evaluate it through the eyes of the giver, the person that offered it to us. Think about this for a second. When you're feeling pain and you're thinking about forgiveness, It's all about you, right? You're thinking about, how did I get impacted by this? What does this mean to me? Is this fair? Should I let it go? But I'm going to encourage you to maybe exert a little bit of a practice of compassion and maybe empathy, and just allow yourself to see it through somebody else's eyes, because we typically only look through it through our eyes, and maybe that's where the win is. So we typically see things only through our own eyes, as the receiver, not the giver. Now, I believe this comes from the struggle that we face as humans, where we perceive that wrongdoing and is something that happens deliberately. Think about that. If somebody ever wrongs you, you'll notice that the initial perception, and this is the way we're wired, is that the person that did it or the thing that happened in some way, shape, or form was deliberate, not accidental. Now, imagine if you had the ability to just even entertain whether or not it was accidental. And, we know that, I think you find that in the Bible, forgive them for they know not what they do. That statement is so liberating, because it means that they didn't even know that they did it. And that means that you're releasing yourself from the lion's mouth of that deliberate, insinuation. But what if it was accidental? That's why we teach everybody in our academy that's doing the real work. What if it was what if it was an accident, right? We don't know for sure, and you don't have to embrace that. But what if maybe it was an accident, or maybe it was unconscious, meaning they didn't even know that they would do that? It's a choice that we have to make right there, and it's not easy. Have you ever wondered if that person, this is an interesting thing, if somebody ever wrongs you or criticizes you or just says something that kind of unsettles you, have you ever walked away thinking, I wonder if that person walked away feeling the pain of technically the arrow that they just shot themselves with, that is in their foot, that is comfortably sitting in their mouth right now, foot and mouth disease. I wonder if people walk away, because I know myself, when I do something wrong or if I wrong somebody, I very often walk away kind of like, oh, God, that came out wrong. But I wonder if they know that. So sometimes that would be a place for me to apologize, right? Or just let people know. So this reminds us of the powerful tool of what we call compassion, right? Where we learn to dig deeper beyond our pain, dig deeper beyond our pain, and see where the real pain lies. Potentially, maybe in the heart of the giver, right? The pain could be lying in the heart of the giver. Otherwise, have you ever felt wonderful and just like totally at ease and comfortable with life and confident, and decided to take that moment and make somebody feel bad? Probably not. So yourself, maybe you got to get to know other people as well. So there's a saying, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot stone with the intent of throwing it at somebody else. I'm sure you've heard that before, right? You're going to get burnt because you're so angry and you want to throw this stone at somebody else. You're the one that's going to get burned in that situation. So when it comes to forgiveness or struggling with forgiveness, in that sense, it's like holding on. This is a Japanese Buddhist thing. It's like holding on to that hot stone that's burning your hand, but holding on to it and waiting for that stone to burn the person who wronged you. So what that's saying is that while we're struggling with forgiveness, we're the one that's hurting. And I always wonder, if somebody wrongs me and I'm sitting there struggling with forgiving them. And the reason why I'm struggling is I don't want that. I don't want the universe or anyone, or especially them, to know that I think that what they did is okay. That's not what forgiveness is. But I wonder if they even care. That's something that I wonder. I wonder if they have passed something on to me that is not a burden on them at all. It's just on me. And that seems kind of silly. That's like climbing a mountain with a bag of rocks on my shoulder. It just doesn't make sense. So when you refuse to forgive, you suffer twice. And this is like the story of the two arrows of suffering, once again from Buddhism. The first arrow would be the one that strikes you, but it's unavoidable. We can't control what happens in life, right? Very often, that's the whole concept of adversity. Um, but it's the second arrow that you shoot yourself with, right? And that's because of the way you responded to the first arrow. So the first arrow was unavoidable as it was shot by another, but the second arrow, the second one, is shot by you straight into your own foot. So first from the wound, and again from the weight that you carry, or you continue to carry. So forgiveness isn't about condoning what happened. That's why we struggle with it, especially if you think that it was intentional or deliberate. It's not about condoning what happened, saying, hey, it's no big deal. It's about refusing to carry it and letting it define you any longer. That's what forgiveness is, in my eyes. So let's look at this word forgiveness. This is fun. You know what's a fun thing to do if you're struggling with any of these things is take the word and just break it apart and see if you can reorganize it and reframe it. So the concept of forgiveness is really an act of giving. It's not passive. It's not a weakness. It's actually powerful, right? It's a powerful conscious decision to give yourself relief. See, that's a fun way to look at forgiveness is that you're making a conscious decision to relieve yourself, to provide yourself with peace, space, and freedom. It's a selfish act, right? So you don't have to worry about condoning something, even if it was deliberate. Your power move, reclaiming control as the dominant force of your life, the shot caller, and reclaiming your power is about saying, it's not going to bother me. So it's a power move. It's not a sign of weakness, and it's not a sign of condoning something. You give yourself the gift of no longer waiting for the past to change, which is that oscillation. That's that rocking chair. The past cannot change. We can reframe the past. We can go back and look at things, and I talk about this in the Make Sense Academy in our book. We call it Life is a Line. We can go back and establish a new vantage point, but we can't wait for the past to change. You give up the role of the victim or the villain, which is very common in forgiveness, and you give the story a new ending. Isn't that interesting? Now, let me say hi. I see Najami here, I see Eric here, Glenn, Alex, Danielle, Bob, some names that I recognize from Substack. So great morning to all of you. Thanks for being here. We're here every Monday like this. So there's different types of forgiveness, but forgiveness of others is mercy. It requires mercy to forgive others, right? And that has to do with forgiving them, letting them off the hook, right? And the hook is not that condoning, it's just letting them off from having a hook in you. So you're really letting yourself off the hook. But forgiveness of self is alchemy. Now, I don't know if you know what alchemy is, but when I heard that word, it made me say, So in ancient mysticism, alchemy was the process of turning lead into gold. If you look at its roots, that's what it is. So heavy, dense, and simply worthless worthless things, turning them into something radiant, rare, and powerful. That's what alchemy is. So that's what self-forgiveness does. And this is really cool because it shows you the value of what it will do. This is why I call it the alchemy of forgiveness. It transforms shame into compassion. So that would be like the lead into the gold. It takes something like shame and it turns it into compassion, regret into responsibility, guilt into growth, judgment into grace. Is that an ET statue? No, it isn't. That's funny that you say that, Eric. He's talking about that thing right there. That is actually a skeleton meditating. Isn't that funny? Yeah, got a bunch of. So I read about a book a week, and I have my good friend Jim Quick to thank for that. Took a speed reading course. If anybody ever wants to take his course, because he's one of my best friends, you can get it real cheap. But there's a lot of fun stuff on this. Maybe we should go through my bookshelf one day. This is about a year of reading right here. So thanks for asking. But funny that you said that about ET, Eric, because I was just thinking, wouldn't it be cool if they remade ET with all the technology and stuff right now? Elliot. Okay. So it transforms shame into compassion, regret into responsibility, guilt into growth, and judgment and grace. So that's the alchemy of forgiveness. And forgiveness of life itself, of the things that you cannot control. In Stoicism, they call that the dichotomy of control. One of the most powerful things you could ever do is allow yourself to recognize what we do and don't control in life. And in the Make Sense Academy, we teach this process called the sorting filter. So we teach people how to run everything through a sorting filter. And there's a strategic way to build your sorting filter. But one of the questions your filter does is say, is this in my control or out? And if something is not in your control, the filter doesn't let it in. Isn't that cool? If you ever want to learn anything about the Make Sense Academy, it's an opportunity to get high level coaching, mentorship, and every tool and program and skill set that I've ever taught at a very, very low cost because it's in a group environment. So if anybody ever wants to learn about that and do some of this work, just respond and just say makes sense. I advertise it in all of my blogs and stuff. So today, we don't gather to solve all this stuff. This is important. We're not here to solve and figure all this stuff out. What we're doing is we're gathering today with the idea of softening things, just softening it. Remember, I said I'm going to be working on this for the rest of my life. We're going to soften things to feel, and we're going to actually bless what it is that we claim hurt. Isn't that an interesting concept, to take something that we perceive was a negative and bless it up, bless it? And here's why I think that's cool. Shift in perspective. Here's some good shift coming at you. If you want to do personal growth and have some sort of enhancement of your spiritual life, right? If you want to achieve a higher level of consciousness, you actually require adversity. Otherwise, you'd have nothing to work on. So in Buddhism, they don't look at things as good or bad. If something comes that's not in alignment, that is adverse, what they do is they see it as a blessing and an opportunity. That's a powerful word to add to your vocabulary and your sorting filter, is when adversity strikes, yes, we always try to find the lesson in it, and there's an opportunity. But you got to wonder if that's the sign that the universe gives a shit about you. And it's saying, here's a challenge for you to work on and grow. So if not for people being awful to you, you would have no growth. So there's another interesting one. And universe, that's not me saying, send me a bunch of awful people today, but maybe it is. So let's explore what forgiveness means, not as an endpoint, but a practice, or maybe we'll call it a portal or a path. I say explore to remind myself, right? When I tell you, let's explore, I just say that to remind myself that forgiveness is an ongoing process that one doesn't have to finish, right? There doesn't have to be a finish line. And I told you that. I think this is one of the problems is if you decide to start forgiving, you hope that by tomorrow, everything will be fine. Remember, it's the practice, it's the intention of saying, I'm no longer going to just sit back and hand the keys of trust over to the universe and hope everything goes well. I'm going to make a conscious decision to work towards not letting something bother me. Isn't that cool? So welcome, Alexander. Welcome, everybody in Substack. So let's permit ourselves, it's just an allowance. Let's permit ourselves to move beyond thought, beyond blame, and beyond our ego that's standing guard in front of our brains. Beyond ego, and allow ourselves for a moment that in the Japanese call satori. Anybody know what satori means? Satori is a really cool word. Almost there. Satori is an ancient Japanese Buddhist term, and it's not some sort of a knowing or a belief. It's not some sort of a conclusion. It's a felt recognition that everything, now hear this. This is what satori means. This is a wonderful place to find yourself. It's a felt recognition that everything, and I mean everything, the good, the bad, the glorious, the terrible, the mean people, the nice people, everything is just the way it is for a reason and is just absolutely right, just the way it is. So Satori is this moment where somebody says, "Hey, dragon, how are you?" And your answer is, you go through your head and you say, "There's good, there's bad, and all that stuff." And your answer is, "It's all good. It's all good." So wouldn't that be something to strive for? So that's what Satori is. So the experience of Satori is what my one of my favorite passed away, but one of my favorite authors and theologians is Alan Watts, and he called it profound rightness. It's that place where everything is right, just the way it is. And we don't feel like anything needs to change. Not because it was fair, right? This is why this is not fair, right? There's a lot of fair and not fair in the world. Not because it was fair, not because it didn't hurt, right? We very often judge things based on how we felt after them, but because in that moment of absolute presence, that story starts to dissolve. And remember that everything is based on the meaning we give it and the story that we create around it. And after the story dissolves, the only thing that remains is the truth, your truth. So forgiveness acts as a bridge to that moment. It's an inner gesture that says this: I no longer need to feel, oh, I'm sorry, it says this: I no longer need this to be different for me to be free. Say that to yourself about your life. I no longer need the things in my life to be different, the circumstances in my life to be different in order for me to be free. I am free. And that's what Satori is. Isn't that cool? That's the payoff of forgiveness. And have I ever experienced 100% pure, self actualized Satori? I can't say that I have, but it's where I'm heading when I'm doing the work of forgiveness. Make sense? So, in that space, we realize that Satori isn't something to chase, it's not something far away. It's actually something that's already here inside of us. And perhaps today, perhaps, maybe, might be, perhaps today, it's time to see all of this stuff that we want as an unwrapped present that's been left over with your name on it under the Christmas tree. And maybe today is the day that you just decide to begin unwrapping it. Make sense? So that's all for today. If you follow the Make Sense with Dr. JC podcast, you'll get the shorter uh, edited versions of this and a lot more stuff. Just a joy and a pleasure to be with you today. Um, Love when people reach out to me directly. And remember something: if you learn something today, give it away, because that's the only way it's going to stay. Give it away. Take what you learn and learn twice by giving it away. So have a nice day. Love and appreciate you. I'll see you next time. Now I'm going to turn all of the channels off. Bye bye now. Speak to you soon.